In a previous video, I showed how explorers and missionaries, and those involved in conquest had reinforced negative views of African people. Unsurprisingly, those responsible for the enslavement and colonization of African people did the same thing, perhaps to justify their conduct, but more likely because they were absolutely convinced they were correct. 35 years after the first English slavers took people from Africa, the English writer Richard Hakluyt published the Principal Navigations in 1598. This book contained the accounts of the English slavers John Locke and Thomas Windham. Hakluyt's book says that Locke described African people as living like beasts, without a god, religions, or laws, after visiting the Portuguese slaving Fort Mina in 1554. A different John Locke, the influential English philosopher, was an investor in a slaving company, the Royal Africa Company. He argued that women could have children by monkeys in an essay concerning human understanding in 1690. The type of monkeys Locke referred to are only found in Africa. Slavers who owned plantations also contributed their ideas. Edward Long, an 18th-century English slaver based in Jamaica, compared enslaved Africans to monkeys and apes. He also described them as idle, unintelligent, sexually depraved, beast-like thieves. In Britain, as campaigns to end slavery grew, those who were against abolition responded. Brian Edwards, an English MP and slaver, wrote that enslaved Africans in the so-called West Indies were lustful and looked like baboons. The third American president, Thomas Jefferson, wrote in 1787 that he suspected that black people were inferior. He enslaved over 600 African people. Less than 50 years after slavery was abolished in Britain, several European countries had gained territories in Africa and made them colonies. These territories were formalized after the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, when European colonial powers signed the General Act of Berlin that divided the African continent among them and gave them possession over specific territories. The views that had been put forward by those involved in slavery were continued by those who explored and ran the African colonies. Henry Morton Stanley, who worked for King Leopold II of Belgium, is one example. Another was Sir Frederick Lugard, who was the High Commissioner of the Northern Nigeria Protectorate and went on to be Governor-General of the Colony and Protectorate of Nigeria from its formation in 1914 until 1919. In 1922, he published his second book, The Dual Mandate in British Tropical Africa. In it, he described the minds of African people as nearer to the animal world and compared their race type to children. These ideas did not end with colonialism. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 2019 to 2021, has written of his support for Lugard and for colonialism. In 2002, he penned an article that said of Africa, quote, "The problem is not that we were once in charge, but that we are not in charge anymore." In an article published the same year, he portrayed Africans as, quote, "pickaninnies with watermelon smiles." He is not the only leader of a European country to promote negative ideas of the African continent. In 2017, the French President Emmanuel Macron stated that Africa's challenges were, quote, "civilizational." The huge financial rewards from the people, land, and resources acquired meant that the European countries relied on racial theories to justify their conduct. This might also explain why the beliefs became accepted as fact, especially as they were the conventional view until the end of the 20th century. Stay tuned for more videos on where racism comes from, and please like, share, and subscribe.